Hello, kiddies. This is the Crypt Keeper, and you're listening to Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. Be careful what you ask for. You may get it.
My name is Natalia. I am 30 years old. I'm Greek and I'm a psychotherapist. This summer I visited my boyfriend in Pelio, where he worked for the summer. We stayed at his cousin's house, which is an old traditional house in the woods. To get to the door of the house, you have to walk down a path off the road. Every time my boyfriend and I heard someone walking the path, we would run to the window to check if it was a stranger passing by or his cousin coming home. In that case, we would close our bedroom door, and soon we realized that when laying in bed, we could see who was passing by simply by looking at the reflection of the open window. For that reason, we kept the window open at a specific angle, and every time we heard someone walking down the path, we looked at the reflection and we knew who it was. It was a very rare thing for a stranger to pass by the house, but it did happen a few times. Every day we would wake up and go to the beach bar where he was working and have breakfast together. The house was about 20 minutes driving away from the bar. One morning, I didn't want to go to the beach so early, and also, we had a small fight the night before, and I was still a bit mad. I was awake because of his clock, but had my eyes still closed, and I was hearing him get ready, and was wondering if he would kiss me goodbye. I opened one eye to see what he was doing, and I noticed he had put on a swimsuit and a bright yellow t-shirt on top. I remember I thought, why is he dressed like Tweety in a swimsuit? And I tried not to laugh because I was still a bit mad. He said, "I'm going, bye," and I said bye too. When he closed the door, I watched his reflection walking up the path to the road. When he got in the car and left, I grabbed my phone to text my friend and tell her about the fight we had had the night before. At this point, I was even more upset because of the way we had both handled it. I think it's important to make it clear that I was upset because being upset, I couldn't go back to sleep. And therefore, what happened next could not have been a dream. I was texting my friend and half an hour passed. I still have this conversation with date and time and everything. She was telling me her news when I heard someone walking down the path. I looked at the reflection of the open window, and I saw my boyfriend with his bright yellow t-shirt and his swimsuit coming back. He was holding a plastic bag with probably food wrapped in foil, so I assumed he had brought me breakfast. I found it a bit strange, though, that he wasn't in any hurry. I immediately jumped out of bed to go and open the door for him and hug him and kiss him. But when I opened the door, he wasn't there. Also, there were no cats. You see, there was a cat family living in the garden, and every time they saw him, they would all run to the door, because once he'd open the door, he would pet them and feed them. Since he wasn't there, I assumed the foil was cat food, so I walked around the house expecting to see him feeding the cats. But there was nothing. I then thought, maybe he forgot something and went back to his car to get it. I ran up the path quickly in my bare feet, but he wasn't there either. Also, his car was missing. So I ran back in the house and got on the second floor and looked around the house to see if there was a stranger who simply passed by, wearing the exact same clothes as him. No. Then I realized that only half an hour had passed since he had left for work, so he would have needed 20 minutes to get to the bar and 20 minutes to drive back home. It didn't make any sense. I called him and asked him, "Where did you go?" And he said, "What do you mean? I'm at work." I explained to him what I saw, but I forgot to mention the food wrapped in foil. Then he put his cousin on the phone to assure me he wasn't around the house. I then texted my friend and told her about the incident. Later that day, I fell asleep and slept until about 8 o'clock. A knock on the door woke me up, and when I opened it, the cats stormed into the house, and there was my boyfriend there standing, with his yellow t-shirt and everything, holding a plastic bag with food wrapped in foil. I was speechless. It was like time continued from where it stopped earlier that morning. Now, I'm tired of people telling me I was asleep. I was not. I was running around the house, I spoke on the phone, and I was texting before and after the incident. Also, I was upset about that fight and the way we started our day, so there was no way I was falling asleep without even realizing it. At this point, I want to add to the story that my boyfriend told me about his past, and years ago he used to be married. It happened to be a summer, and he and his wife were sleeping on the couch of their apartment. At one point, she woke up and saw him standing in the kitchen and asked him to bring her some water. He didn't respond and was staring at her with a flat, emotionless expression, as she described it. She then realized that he was still sleeping next to her, and she woke him up. She told him, "I can see you standing in the kitchen." And he said, "What?" She repeated it, "I see you in the kitchen right now." He then got up, looked into the kitchen, and he saw himself too. As he says, "I was looking at me right in the eyes." He then got up to get closer, but when he got to the kitchen, no one was there. I googled a few things and I found about the term doppelganger. The explanation of it, though, isn't clear to me. I know this isn't a crazy ghost story or whatever, but I still find it strange and confusing. Also, I am sure of what I saw, and it was him. It was not blurry or unclear in any way. It was real. My brother and I worked at a pizzeria in our little town in upstate New York in the early 90s. He was a delivery guy, and I was a pizza slinger, getting my gnarly burns and scars from bumping into the oven doors my moron coworkers would leave open behind me. It was an okay job. Free food, and at the end of each night, the managers would let us drink beer while we cleaned up for the day shift the next day. I was 16 at the time. The owner also looked the other way because we always went out of our way to prep and clean so the other crew didn't have to rush before the lunchtime slam. One night, my brother got sick and had to go home, but he was the only delivery guy on, so he asked me if I would take over for the night. He said I could keep all the tips, and he'd throw me an old amp and a head unit for my car if I'd do it. Plus, I got to drive his car for the night, and I loved his car. It was an '86 Regal that he had dropped a 3.8 into with a turbocharger, almost a Grand National. That car was the cat's ass. Sorry about the backstory, but it is important later. My manager said okay as we had two other guys in the kitchen and they could handle things. I took my brother home, went back to the shop, and got ready for my first run. The night went smoothly with everything, and my manager was saying I was quicker than my brother and that he was going to fire him, and we laughed and I said I'd be sure to tell him that. It was just about midnight, and we stopped delivery with orders at that time, but the shop remained open for dine-in and takeout. I had one more run and could go home, but I told the guys I'd be back to help clean and prep. Not just for a couple of more hours of pay, but the thought of a few beers on a Saturday night was too good to pass up when I was 16. I had 4 deliveries to do on my run, and 3 were right in town, but one was on the opposite side and on the edge of our town. I decided to hit up the close ones first as they had also ordered earlier, and then I was going to cruise out to the country, have a smoke, and just relax. I scored some really nice tips, as was usual for deliveries made that late at night, as people were more inclined to be a little saucy at the time. Happy as a clam, I hopped in the car after the 3rd delivery and made my way out to the last stop of the night. The house I had to go to was one of the only ones out there. Back then, that part of our town was very rural, with houses spaced far apart. Now it's all subdivisions. Sorry, I know I'm rambling. I saw the mailbox on the road with the right number, and I pulled into the long driveway. There were no lights on except the one at the side door, and there was one light on upstairs in a room, and it was like a red light bulb or something. I thought weird, but I got the pizza out of the warmer bag and went to the door and rang the bell. No one came to the door. I rang again, and then I heard an intercom click and a woman's voice say, "Pizza? Oh, come on in." There was another clicking noise and then silence. I found the little speaker and pushed the button next to it, and the voice came on again and said, "Pizza?" I answered back, "Yes, but I can't come inside. It's 9:50. The voice replied, "Okay." As I looked through the window of the door, I saw a small set of stairs that led up to a hallway, and as I looked, I saw a person walk by the door. Well, actually, they were crawling on his or her hands and knees. I thought that was a little odd, but maybe the people inside were playing a game or something. I waited for a couple of more minutes, but nothing happened. So I hit the little button again, and the voice once again said, "Pizza?" At this point, I was getting testy, and I said, "Yeah, 9:50. I heard a noise from around the back of the house, like a door opening, so I thought maybe there was an issue with the side door or something. Then the light on the side of the house went out, and I glanced up and down the driveway, now on alert. Another sound from the back of the house made me turn my head, and out from the corner came this person who just stood there looking at me. It was dark, and my eyes were trying to adjust, kind of being blinded by the light now that it was gone. 9:50? I called out feebly. The figure just stood there, and then I could make out that they were raising their hand and pointing towards me, or rather to the side door. I turned and looked into the door glass, and there was another person there standing there, leaning against the glass, wearing a leather mask with a zipper over the mouth. I jumped back startled, and the intercom came back on, and the woman's voice asked again, "Pizza?" I said, "Fuck this," as the figure at the backyard started walking towards me, and the side door started to open. I backpedaled to the car, and thank God I left my door open. I just threw the pizza on the floor, slammed my door shut after jumping in, and took off. Suddenly, a set of vehicle lights blazed to life in front of me, and I could see the person who was inside was now with the other one, and they began walking towards me. I jammed it into reverse and gunned it back to the road and popped out onto it. I looked to my left, and they were still coming with what I saw was a pickup truck right behind them. Never have I been so happy to hear that high-pitched whine of a turbocharger at that moment when I lit up that car's tires and got the hell out of there. I was so happy to be in my brother's car. That slide and then the jolt of rubber catching is something I'll never forget. I sped up the road back towards a main drag where there was a traffic light, but that was about 2 miles away. I looked into the rearview mirror and saw the lights come out onto the road and then up after me. There was a blinking red light, a four-way stop that I had to get to first, and it was also a known spot for cops to hang out for speeders. But of course, that night there was no one there. I was going back and forth in my mind about what to do. It wasn't my car, and I didn't want to get into an accident, but I was also totally freaked out by these wackos in the truck behind me. I stopped for the blinking red light, and they almost caught up with me, and in the glow of the light, I could see 2 people in the truck, and the other 2 people standing up in the back of the truck. I jammed through the intersection, and they blew right through it. It was pretty much a straight shot to the main drag, with a pretty gnarly S-turn in the middle, and I said out loud, "Sorry, Marco," and that's my brother's name, and I hit the gas. The Buick took off like a rocket, and I was dusting those fools. I took the S-curve like Mario Andretti, and I knew they would never be able to pull that off in a truck. I was up to about 115 miles an hour, and by the time I got to the light, which was green, thank God, they were way behind me. I cut the corner knowing I'd be pulled over if there was a cop out, but I was alone, and I just jammed back to the shop and slid into the parking lot. I jumped out of the car, and I ran to the door and yelled for my manager, who just happened to be right by the door. He looked at me startled and ran over and asked what was up, and I just grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him outside, just in time to see the truck with the guys driving by the shop and looking over at both of us. My manager asked what the hell was going on, and I told him the whole story. We went back inside and he called the cops. They came out and I told them what had happened, and the cop left with another cop to go check out the house. I sat down shaking, and I had a smoke waiting for them, and they came back in about a half an hour. There was no one at the house. It was locked up, and when they checked with a neighbor who had heard me peel out and come over when he saw them at the house, he had said that the house was vacant and had been for about 6 months. No one was supposed to be there at all. The cops made a report, but nothing ever happened, and of course, I never saw those guys or that truck again. When I got home, I apologized to my brother for beating on his car after telling him what had happened, and he just laughed and said, "Hey, that's what that car is for, man, making a fast getaway." I have no idea if those guys were just trying to scare me or having fun, or if they had other intentions. It's been so many years, though, honestly, I try not to think about it.